ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. Was there a cover-up? In reporting the Iran affair earlier this week, we have pointed out there was more than one version of what the president knew about the arms sales to Iran and how involved he was in some of the decisions. Tonight we report that various members of the White House staff and even the president may have clearly understood one version of events and simply told the public another. At the White House, Sam Donaldson.
The Tower Commission let in photographers but not reporters for a moment today as it worked on its report due next Thursday that sources say will be explosive and highly damaging to the president. The commission is considering former National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane's latest testimony to it, that last November he prepared a false chronology of events in the arms to Iran episode for the White House in order to protect the president. McFarlane said he knew what he was setting forth was inaccurate, and so did certain White House officials. A presidential spokesman replied today that he couldn't speak for everyone, but President Reagan was not part of any cover-up attempt. However, one knowledgeable source tells ABC News that in preparing for his ill-fated November 19th news conference, the president was aware that some of the explanations and rationales he rehearsed were false. The Tower Commission is also expected to be very critical of Secretary of State Shultz's role. Not for what he did, he opposed the arms sale policy, but for what he didn't do in failing to fight harder to stop it. The commission thinks Schultz knew more about the 1986 sales than he's wanted the public to believe. Beset by mounting troubles, the president visited a downtown hotel in search of comfort and reassurance from a convention of his conservative supporters.
The going may be a little rough at this moment, but be of good cheer. We're coming back and coming back strong.
Mr. Reagan got the expression of support he wanted, but the same was not true for two of his key advisors. Republican presidential hopeful Jack Kemp called for the Secretary of State to resign.
It's time for Mr. Schultz to do the only correct thing. In my view, it's time for George Schultz to resign.
And another presidential hopeful, Reverend Pat Robertson, calls for White House Chief of Staff Donald Regan to resign.
I would think that the president would be well served by the resignation of Donald Regan.
The presidential spokesman said flatly Mr. Reagan has full confidence in his Secretary of State. But concerning Chief of Staff Regan, who rode with the president today, the spokesman said that was true until the president said otherwise. When the Reagans left for their Camp David weekend retreat, the president, asked if he's worried about the Tower Commission report, shouted back no. Mrs. Reagan, asked about the story that Chief of Staff Regan hung up on her when she phoned him last week, made no reply. If the president isn't worried about what the Tower Commission will say, he may be the only one around here who isn't. His top aides are said to know that a report that might spotlight staff misdeeds and a misguided policy would be bad enough. But one that suggests the president participated in a cover-up would be devastating. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, the White House.
The Tower Commission has apparently also learned that Oliver North passed on secret intelligence information about Iraq's military situation to Iran. But sources tell ABC's Bob Zelnick that North was authorized to do so by his superiors. They also say North might have embellished the information a little. And there have been other revelations today about the Reagan administration, the CIA, counterterrorism, and a plot to invade Libya. Here is our national security correspondent, John McCarthy.
It was the two-week hostage ordeal of TWA Flight 847 in 1985 that apparently drove the Reagan administration to take controversial steps to deal with the mounting frustration over terrorism. For example, President Reagan signed a secret presidential finding authorizing U.S. officials to grab terrorists in foreign countries and bring them back to the U.S. to face trial. Pushing this move, Secretary of State Schultz, CIA Director Casey, and Oliver North. Reportedly against it, FBI Director William Webster. U.S. officials stressed that the directive signed a year ago was aimed at abducting terrorists in places like Lebanon, where there was no effective central government. The U.S. has not yet tried to go after anybody, and officials say to do so will be extremely difficult without getting someone caught or killed in the process. There appears to be general support in Congress.
If you have a genuine, active terrorist in your sights and you pick them up off the streets and use them for other purposes, why not?
Also after the TWA hijacking, sources say the U.S. and Egypt secretly began joint military planning for a possible attack on Egypt's neighbor, Libya, believed to be the source of much terrorist activity in the region. Though Egypt and the U.S. frequently conducted maneuvers together, intelligence sources say the president signed a document known as a Terms of Reference that allowed U.S. planners to discuss with Egypt how to strike Libya and how U.S. forces might be involved. Sources say the Defense Department argued strenuously against such a plan, but discussions continued anyway. Libya, however, never provided Egypt with a reason to retaliate, and the contingency plans were never used. John McWethy, ABC News, the State Department.
Later in this broadcast, Mario Cuomo says he will not be running for president. The reason? Deciding who gets the big bucks in baseball. And our Person of the Week.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by Maalox Antacids.
Tums doesn't have it. Rolaids doesn't have it. Maalox Plus does. We have what you need for complete relief of excess acid, heartburn, and gas. Maalox for acid and heartburn, plus simethicone for gas. Get complete relief. Try Maalox Plus.
Aren't you going to say anything about this Pontiac 6000?
Oh, you mean about how well it handles, how quick it is, how it's one fine road car?
Well, yeah.
Come on, if I said all that, we'd sound like a car commercial. We feel excited. Singers will do that.
Pontiac!
When your child is sick, you have enough to worry about. That's why this BD digital fever thermometer is so helpful. It gives you accurate readings 4 times faster than the old glass kind. 4 times faster and safer, too. No glass to break. A beep signal tells you when to read it, and the big bold numbers are easy to see. From BD, the thermometer brand doctors use most. BD takes the worry out of taking temperatures.
It has been an interesting day for political analysts. Not many would have told you with any certainty yesterday afternoon that the governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, was not going to run for the presidency. His announcement to that effect last night was quite a surprise. Today, the man who has really been a presidential candidate in many people's minds ever since his speech at the Democratic National Convention met with reporters to explain himself. Here's ABC's Jim Wooten.
The problem, he said today, was that he just cannot run New York and run for president, not simultaneously.
Because the principal concern is how you manage this state and try to be 50 days in Iowa. That's not easy to do.
And so he's not even going to try. And if that's bad news for his backers, it made a lot of other folks very happy.
Obviously, a dominant figure like Mario Cuomo leaving the race opens room for dark horses and unknowns like myself.
Congressman Gephardt's analysis was common among other Democratic hopefuls today, including the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Oh, the race is wide open. It always was wide open because, in a real sense, it has never begun. So this is the season where you prospect for gold, but no gold has yet been mined.
Frontrunner Gary Hart, who's been dogged by Cuomo in the early polling, saw his departure as an opportunity.
As those who had listed him as their first choice make their own decisions about where they go, we hope that a substantial number of them will come in our direction.
Well, the only other candidate there is Gary Hart. I spoke with him this afternoon and suggested that he move that nominations be closed.
But not just yet. Cuomo's no is almost certain to bring a yes from another liberal Democratic governor, Michael Dukakis of Massachusetts.
It's always an opening for all candidates when a very formidable and very important and very impressive person decides not to run.
Governor Cuomo was far from certain of his party's nomination and not without major problems as a candidate, none of which matters much now, unless, of course, he's in the market to be drafted. To the Yankees or the Mets? Of course, he said. To the White House, not a chance. Jim Wooten, ABC News, New York.
In other news today, Dennis Levine, the man whose arrest broke open Wall Street's insider trading scandal, found out today what price he is going to pay the government. He's going to go to jail, and he'll pay a fine of $362,000. Here's ABC's Sander Van Oker.
Levine was a Wall Street whiz kid, 34 years old, managing director of one of Wall Street's hottest firms, Drexel Burnham Lambert, a merger specialist who made over $1 million a year and boasted of wearing $1,000 suits. Today at a White Plains, New York court, Levine learned he could spend the next 2 years in jail.
I realized that I've committed very serious crimes, for which I'm very sorry, and it was a very painful lesson to learn.
Levine's crime was tipping off others on Wall Street about upcoming mergers. They could then use this inside information to buy or sell stocks at just the right moment and make millions of dollars in illegal profits. In court today, he said, "I'll never violate the law again."
I hope that other young professionals starting out in their career learn and not make the same mistakes that I did when I started my career.
Levine could have been sentenced to 20 years in jail. The reason he got only 2 is that he's been talking. He's the man who pointed the finger at Ivan Boesky, by far the biggest name to fall in the insider scandal. In turn, Boesky has named other traitors, including Martin Siegel, who pleaded guilty to fraud charges just last week. Thus far, a dozen Wall Street insiders have been implicated in this scandal. Dennis Levine was the first. Prosecutors say he will not be the last. Sander Van Oker, ABC News, New York.
Sander will have more on the Wall Street scandal this Sunday on our program Business World. In tonight's other money matters, on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrials lost almost 9 points. The trading was active. That still left the gain for the week at almost 58 points. In our next segment, what it's been like to be the U.S. ambassador in the Soviet Union.
Who builds the best family wagons in America? 200 owners of Ford and GM cars compared Dodge Caravan and Plymouth Voyager with new V6 power to Ford Aerostar and Chevy Astro. After judging 45 important features, they rated Chrysler's front-wheel drive family wagons best. 79% chose Voyager and Caravan over Astro, 84% chose them over Aerostar. And only Chrysler's family wagons get a new 770 protection plan. End of test.
Is this what a weekend is really for? Marriott presents the $59 2 for breakfast weekend, where you can be alone together, lounge by the pool in sweet oblivion, dance the night away, one glorious night or a whole weekend for just $59 per night, not per person. A hearty breakfast for 2 is even included in the price. Marriott's 2 for breakfast weekend, $59 through March 28th. Call 1-800-USA-WKND.
When you need it most, you can get extra strength relief from acid indigestion with extra strength Riapan Plus. In lab tests, ounce for ounce, it neutralizes twice the acid as regular Maalox or Mylanta. It's that strong. Extra strength Riapan Plus.
If you're looking for a simple way to apply for the American Express card, simply pick up one of these, because now you can apply over the phone. Just call 1-800-THE-CARD.
Overseas today, Syria is apparently getting ready to move troops into West Beirut to enforce a ceasefire between rival militias. Sources tell ABC's Jerry King in Damascus that about 4,000 Syrian troops will take up positions in and around West Beirut and along the road to Sidon in the south of Lebanon. Hundreds of people have been killed and wounded in a week of quite unusually horrible fighting. A woman showed up at the Vatican today and asked to see the Pope. She turned out to be the mother of Mehmed Ali Ajah, the man who shot the Pope 6 years ago. The Pope gave her a private audience, told her he had already forgiven her son for shooting him. After a week of confusion, the Soviet dissident Joseph Begun is a free man. Tonight, Begun was released from a prison 500 miles east of Moscow, where he was met by his wife and his son. His release followed a series of demonstrations on his behalf in Moscow. And then there is the story of an American who's leaving the Soviet Union. The American, really. After more than 5 years as the U.S. ambassador in Moscow, Arthur Hartman is coming home. As ABC's Walter Rogers reports, it's been a difficult assignment.
As American ambassador in Moscow, Arthur Hartman has done it all, from dealing with the Kremlin to babysitting diplomats' children.
There's a chair over here.
Yes. One day, he has to greet the Pillsbury Doughboy. Another day, he's embassy plumber.
But that pipe is now really finished. It can't be used at all.
Most of the time, however, he's handling the most sensitive problems between the superpowers. And the assessments have been good.
Hartman was getting access in Moscow to Shevardnadze and even to Gromyko in a way that American ambassadors had not had before. So the implication was that they trusted him, they brought him in to arms control negotiations.
Hartman has been critical of himself, however, saying he's not been the greatest success here. His has been an extremely difficult watch. During his tenure, the Soviets walked out of the Geneva arms talks. They shot down a South Korean airliner. The Soviets changed the guard 3 times. They seized American reporter Nick Daniloff, jailing him as a spy. Then they withdrew all Soviet workers from the U.S. Embassy here, turning American diplomats into laborers. But Arthur Hartman is not leaving Moscow of his own volition. President Reagan recalled him, and the ambassador leaves with regrets.
We haven't yet persuaded Mr. Gorbachev to go to the United States. I think it would be a good idea for him just to go over there and see our country and perhaps, hopefully, to have a few of his misconceptions dispersed.
Hartman also complains the Soviets tried to isolate him here. Not once in 5 years did a Russian official ever invite the American ambassador to his home for dinner. Worse, the Soviets used their ambassador in Washington to conduct business, deliberately bypassing the American embassy here. So Ambassador Hartman and his wife Donna reached out to the artistic and dissident community here, inviting dissident pianist Vladimir Feltzman to play when his own government banned him from holding concerts. The Hartmans prescribe a healthy sense of humor to survive in Moscow, and the ambassador suggested one other ingredient for doing business with the Russians.
Lots of patience. Lots of patience, and I think more than anything else, you have to learn not to take things personally.
His staff called him the consummate ambassador. Walter Rogers, ABC News, Moscow.
And we have another note about a man named Hartman. We do know this one somewhat better. David Hartman, who's been the host of Good Morning America for the last 11 years, is going to get up at a more civilized hour in the future. Hartman said on his last broadcast this morning that he wasn't retiring, just moving on. On Monday, Charles Gibson, that's the fellow on the right there, will begin as the host on Good Morning America. He comes from this news division, and we are kind of proud of him, too. When we come back, deciding those salary figures. Which should be the real ones, the baseball owners or the players?
From Pella Windows and Doors, the Sunrise Bow Window.
Pella.
The Magical Window Nook.
Pella.
The Bubble Bath Skylight.
Pella.
The Sunday Paper Sunroom.
Pella.
Pella makes your home a better place to live, and we'll show you how. Come and get your free idea book, only at your Pella Window Store. We're listed in your telephone directory.
Sure, the pride is back. Plymouth Sundance and Plymouth Voyager are the proof. The pride is back. Plymouth Sundance, the unbelievable American under $7,600, the best value in its class. Plymouth Voyager, front-wheel drive, optional V6 power, and a new 7-year or 70,000-mile protection plan backs them both.
The pride is back, born in America again.
Kellogg's Corn Flakes is my favorite cereal. I love them a lot.
It's not fancy, it's just really good. It's just like a breath of fresh air early in the morning. It's crunchy and it just gets me going. You pour the Kellogg's Corn Flakes, put some milk on it, some fresh fruit, you got a perfect breakfast.
Kellogg's Corn Flakes means bringing my baby up the right way, the healthy way. And I love them this much.
Corn Flakes from Kellogg's. What more could you want from a cereal?
Dad's bad, Mommy. Daddy's coughing like crazy.
Oh, you sound awful.
Give him my cough medicine.
Daddy needs something stronger than that.
When a strong cough comes on, adults need a strong medicine to help turn it off. Vicks Formula 44, the only liquid cough medicines with the maximum strength cough suppressant adults need in every formula for the relief adults want.
Let's go, Dad.
Formula 44, strong medicine to help turn a strong cough off. From Vicks, of course.
Well, the boys of summer are starting to report to spring training. They're starting to get the kinks out of the muscles, those extra pounds off the waistline. It will not be long before most of us will be wrapped up to some degree in the pennant races. But as Dick Schaap reports, this early in the year, for many players, the national pastime is not runs, hits, and errors. It's money.
The game came to an end today. The game called Big League Arbitration. And most of the celebrating was being done not by players, but by owners. The arbitration system in Big League Baseball is 14 years old. The player submits the salary he wants to receive. The team submits the salary it wants to pay. And then an impartial arbitrator picks one or the other. Nothing in between. To be eligible for arbitration, you must have 3 years of Major League service. Of the 109 men eligible this year, only 9 went to arbitration and won. 16 went to arbitration and lost. 83 negotiated salaries without going to arbitration. And the final case, which was heard today, is still to be decided. The reason fewer players are winning than in the early years of arbitration may be that as the pay scale has skyrocketed from a $36,000 average in 1973 to a $412,000 average now, arbitrators understandably have become less likely to consider a player deprived. Yet there were 2 big winners this week. Ron Darling of the world champion New York Mets, who won $1,050,000 yesterday.
That's a good process. When the negotiations break down and nothing can be worked out, it's a good forum to be able to go to.
And Don Mattingly of the crosstown New York Yankees, who won a record $1,975,000 a few days ago.
Not going to trick anybody into make a guy think you're worth more than you really are. You got to prove that you're worth it.
Mattingly and Darling each earned roughly $250,000 more than their teams offered.
I think the fine hand of the union was in there pushing him to go to arbitration to look for this record.
You can't please everybody. That's what makes horse racing and arbitration. Dick Schaap, ABC News.
When we come back, our person of the week.
I'm not an actor. I'm just a guy, 30 years old, who had a heart attack. I'm okay now, but I want to tell you one thing I learned. Medical studies prove that a diet low in fats and cholesterol with foods like Fleischmann's margarine can actually help reduce the level of cholesterol already in your body. And that's one way you can help reduce your risk of heart disease. I thought you'd like to know that. Take care.
Fleischmann's margarine. Ask your doctor.
We owe it to you. So we invite GM and Ford to follow Chrysler.
You know, for 5 years, I've been feeling like the guy who sent invitations to a party and nobody came. Well, somebody finally showed up. GM and Ford decided the time has come to improve their warranties. Chrysler says, welcome to the party. It's good for America. Maybe that's why we haven't heard from the Japanese. Millions of Americans are only getting 2 or 3 year protection. What are they, second-class citizens? We've backed 5 million Chrysler owners with 550 protection. Our quality had to improve, and dramatically. So, the party's over. Chrysler announces the end of 550 and the beginning of 770, the best powertrain protection in the business. 7 years or 70,000 miles on the powertrain, 100,000 miles against outer body rust through on every Chrysler, Dodge, and Plymouth we build, car, truck, and minivan. Like I said, if you're looking for who builds them best, take a good look at who backs them best.
And finally this evening, our person of the week. We have chosen a person who is walking away from a position of power, but someone who is not going to be content away from the corridors of power for very long. He leaves in his wake remarkable growth in the U.S. Navy.
I think it's time after 6 years of this kind of all-consuming job to spend more time with the family and go to more Little League games and give the children a little more attention.
John Lehman became Secretary of the Navy when Ronald Reagan became President.
I really love this job. It's the best job, I think, in not only in the government, but probably in the world.
So why is he leaving?
It is no secret that government salaries are not beneficial to long-term financial health.
This enormously self-assured man, who is now 44, has the Navy in his genes and government in his blood. His father was a naval officer. Ever since going to a Jesuit college in Philadelphia, Lehman has wanted to wield influence in the field of national security. He has long been an advocate of aggressive defense. When President Ford nominated him for a position in arms control, a leading Republican senator asked, Wasn't that putting the fox in the chicken coop? Lehman is the youngest Secretary of the Navy this century, and some would say the most influential, at least since the end of World War II. The remarkable growth in the Navy under his leadership is the centerpiece of debate about Lehman's ideology.
We're going to reach 600 ships in 1989, and we're manning them all at 100%.
Why 600 ships? There were 479 when Lehman arrived. Because he believes that in time of war, the battle should be carried to the Soviet Union. He wants superiority at sea. Lehman has often said that before he arrived, the U.S. had a 1.5 ocean navy for a 3-ocean world. But Lehman's critics believe that his configuration for the Navy is dangerously unbalanced. Too much emphasis on glamorous battleships and aircraft carriers.
Much too heavily weighted in the direction of the big carriers and the number of big carriers, rather than what is really the Navy's first and most important task, which is making sure that we get protected cargoes from the United States to major theaters of war.
And the big ships are very expensive. The question is, will the Navy, in its present form, survive John Lehman?
It seems to me that when John Lehman leaves office, he will be turning over an expertly driven, finely tuned racing machine to his successor, well ahead in the race. But the real question is whether or not there's sufficient gasoline in the tank, either to win or to complete the race course.
However his legacy turns out, John Lehman has not been a rowboat secretary. He is a lieutenant commander in the Navy Reserve, and he has made a point of doing his reserve duty at sea so that he can stay in touch with the sailors and the pilots. And Lehman has not been hurt by looking, as someone put it, like an aging choir boy. In those back halls of power, though, it is said he can be ruthless, and he doesn't disagree.
When you make a decision and there are two strongly held sides, the losers call losing being the victims of ruthlessness. But you have to be ruthless sometimes in being decisive.
Who can really say what lies ahead for such an ambitious man? Would he like to come back as the Secretary of State, or maybe Defense?
I have no immediate plans to come back to the government, but someday I would like to come back, and this national security business is is certainly my profession.
And so we choose John Francis Lehman, the Secretary of the Navy. Mr. Lehman is often blunt about what he thinks. Our job, he once said, is to put the Soviet Navy on the bottom if it tries to interfere with America's free use of the sea. Mr. Lehman is retiring, but he's certainly not shy. That's our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. Have a good weekend. Good night.
From ABC, this has been World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
You have heard about America.
America is not a flag or a piece of territory.
But nothing can prepare you for what is to come.
It's each one of us.
For the next 2 episodes, see for yourself about America.
How can we give it up?
America Tonight.
Stauffer Seeds,